Assalamu alaikum, ladies and gentlemen. Today we are privileged to have Ambassador Tariq Azizuddin. And I have the privilege that I served with him as Deputy Head of Mission in Embassy of Pakistan, Kabul. It was a trying time from 2005 till 2009 that I was the Deputy Head of Mission, and that is the period that he was the ambassador. I went to Kabul at least, I think, 3 months before. But when he came, so everything lit up. And I can say with confidence that he is the man of action. And he is the man, being a Sadozai himself, and I being Popozai. So if those who know the Afghan history, that how it works in Afghanistan. And President Karzai used to tell Ambassador Tariq Azizuddin that you can claim Kabul. Ambassador, am I right?
Yes, absolutely.
So if that is the case, and I also remember that His Majesty Zahir Shah, when we called on him, Ambassador Tariq Azizuddin, I accompanied him. And he said that I'm so glad that there are two Duranis who have called on me. And when he came to know that Ambassador Tariq Azizuddin is a Sadozai, and he himself is a Mohammadzai.
Mohammadzai.
And he said, we have fought so much among ourselves. And then he said that Popolzais, actually, they were the backbone.
Yes.
So it was such an exhilarating experience for me personally. And today, I have the privilege to present to you Ambassador Tariq Azizuddin. Sir, welcome. Welcome to the Ambassador's Lounge. It is really a privilege. And it was really an honor for me to work with you and work with you as your deputy in Embassy of Pakistan, Kabul.
Thank you very much, Asif. I usually call you Asif Jan, but I will restrict myself to Asif. It was a privilege for me. The only one and singular reason for my success, if I may call that, of my tenure in Kabul is because you were my backbone and you stood by me.
I'm honored.
Through all hard and good times, and I was privileged and I was very happy in that tenure of mine.
Well, sir, it was really a privilege for me. But today we are here. Let me tell you that Ambassador's Lounges today, it is not complete. Our three other fellows, they are busy because of their personal reasons. But as we say that the show must go on, so we said that since it's Friday and we have to now resume our Ambassador's Lounge episodes. Last week we did it on Friday, and today we are doing it on Friday, and it is at the moment, this is the program that we will have our recordings on each Friday. So let me introduce Ambassador Riaz Bukhari is there.
Assalamu alaikum, sir.
And then Ambassador Tanvir Khaskheli is there.
Thank you.
And we have worked with you. You have been our senior. I know you rescued me from one of the bad patches way back in 1996 with
But we are not discussing that episode
with Mr. Asif Ahmad Ali, and there was a bad patch with his driver and me, and then you were the DG headquarters, and but that's behind us. Now, sir, here today, we are gathered here, and we want to discuss your career. If you can enlighten us about your career, because in that, Afghanistan occupies the central place, if I'm right.
Yes, it does.
If that is the way, so please at least you define right from your beginning, I mean, how you entered the Foreign Service. And since I know you, so if you can briefly tell us also your stint in the army, and then your stint with the governor of Punjab, and then Zulfikar Ali Bhutto. So I think our audience would be enlightened.
I was born and bred in Peshawar and joined the army in 1969. Went to the Pakistan Military Academy in Kakul, spent 2 years there, got my commission in August of 1971. That's a little over 50 years ago. And joined a very old historic regiment of cavalry regiment of the Pakistan Army called Probin's Horse, also known as 5 Horse. I spent 2 years in the regiment and was posted as ADC to the governor of Punjab in August of 1973.
Who was the governor then?
Nawab Sadiq Hussain Qureshi.
Okay.
In fact, when I arrived, he had taken oath just a day before.
Right.
I spent 2 years with him. During my tenure as ADC, I came across some very, very interesting times. If you recall, the Pakistan People's Party's main political strength came from Punjab, and the then Prime Minister Zulfikar Ali Bhutto used to spend 3 or 4 days a week in Lahore, because that's where his strength came from. And he used to see me because I was in the governor's house, and he used to come and live there. And occasionally I would run into him. Then he would talk to me. So my governor asked him one day if he didn't mind, Mr. Bhutto, if he didn't mind, I could be his ADC while he was visiting Lahore.
Right.
And Mr. Bhutto said, yeah, fine, my boys can get a rest. So they would rest and I would be serving him tirelessly. Mr. Bhutto was a very hardworking man, and working with him was keeping me on edge, at the same time learning so much.
Is it correct that he was insomniac?
No, it's not correct. He was very hardworking. He would have his evening good time, and then at 10 o'clock sharp, everything finished. The files would come, and he would sit till 1 a.m., from 10 till 1, and read every single file and make a remark, a record of every view that he had on every single file. And
Right.
put the bundle back and said, Tariq, are you sleepy now? I said, I am sleepy now. Are you sleepy now? Yes, sir. Here, you can take them back. So I would take the files back, and then I would look through the files, look at his remarks, and learn from them, because he was the most amazing thing that happened to Pakistan after the Quaid-e-Azam.
If I know correctly, you could also recall his speeches.
Yes, yes. One day, my governor had not accompanied us to Faisalabad, somewhere near Faisalabad, some tehsil. And I was standing behind Mr. Bhutto, and he was speaking, and I was listening. And I used to admire him so much that anything, any gesture, any move he would make, I would just absorb it. So when I came back to Lahore, my governor asked me, "Kya hua aaj?" And I told him the story. And the kind of person I am, while I was telling him the story, I started reproducing the speech verbatim in Mr. Bhutto's style. Mr. Bhutto had a special style of speaking. And I would reproduce the whole speech. So my governor was shocked. He says, "Tumne tape kahan rakhi hui hai?" मैं tape नहीं है जी, ऐसी याद से बोल रहा हूँ. So that evening when he went to sit with Mr. Bhutto for the evening activity, he said, "Sir, आपकी आज speech बड़ी अच्छी थी." So he says, "How do you know, Nawab Sahab? You weren't even there." He says, "But I know the whole speech, sir." "How?" So he says that Tariq told me. So he told you what? He says, "He reproduced your entire speech for me."
Right.
So he said, "Oh, I must see that because I don't know what I said. I'd like to see a replay." Bulao, Tariq ko bulao. So I was called in and said, "Tariq, you have been repeating my speech to Nawab Sahab?" I said, "Yes, sir." He says, "Oh, so you're a very dangerous man. I must be careful speaking in front of you." I said, "Sir, you were speaking in front of 20,000 people.
Right.
I was standing behind you." He says, "No, I'm just joking." "Okay, but what did you tell him?" I said, "I told him about your speech, sir." He said, "No. How did you tell him?" So I started off and I reproduced the whole speech. And Mr. Bhutto was shocked beyond belief. He says, "How do you do it?" I said, "I don't know, sir." I told him, I said, "It's because I admire you so much, sir, that I like to absorb everything you say and do. And that's why I was able to reproduce this." He says, "Amazing boy. You're an amazing boy." "Thank you, sir." I turned around and came out. Some weeks later, when Mr. Bhutto was again in Lahore, the governor was sitting with him, and the governor was a very nervous man, and he was always worrying that something should not go wrong. And his
Very careful.
Man Friday for everything
Right.
was me. So he would press the button and ADC साहब को बुलाओ. So Mr. Bhutto would say, "यार, मैं बैठा हूँ, ये बैठा है. ADC साहब को बुलाओ." I would come in, "Tariq, yes sir." I would lean forward and he said, "Is everything all right?" I said, "Yes sir." "Thank you, Tariq." And I would go back. After 5 minutes again, I would be called. After 5 minutes again, I would be called. So Bhutto Sahab was watching all this and he was in a good mood at that time. So he said, "यार नवाब साहब क्या कर रहे हो? इसको अपने सामने बिठा दो ताकि तुम इसको देखते रहो और इससे बातें पूछते रहो." So
Right.
governor got a little nervous and he said, "Tariq, sit down. Sit down. Francis, one for the ADC." Yes.
Really?
Francis was our butler.
Acha, acha.
Okay, so Francis, and that's how my sessions with Mr. Bhutto started. Those were pre-prohibition days, so
Right.
it was all right.
It was okay.
It was okay. And on another occasion, I was called by Mr. Bhutto, made to sit down. Francis was called, and he said, "Tariq, how well do you know my sons?" I said, "I know them both very well, sir." He says, "Can you persuade one of them or both of them to join the army like you?" I said, "Sir, people don't join the army on persuasion. People join the army because they want to join the army. This comes from inside."
Right.
So he says, "Why did you join?" I said, "Sir, because my father was in the army." "Okay, I'm not in the army, but can you try? Can you work on them?" I said, "Okay, sir, I'll try, sir." So I tried to talk to Mir Murtaza, and he said, "Sir, tu pagal ho gaya." So
Mir Murtaza telling you?
yes, he rubbished me completely. तू गया काफी नहीं है, अब मैं किस लिए जाऊं? So he was out. The younger one was 16 years old at that time, 15. And
Shahnawaz.
Shahnawaz. His nickname was Gogel.
Yeah.
And I told him, and he said, नहीं sir, मैं फौज में नहीं जाता हूँ. So I told this to Mr. Bhutto, and he said, "So what do you think I should do?" I said, "Admit him in Cadet College Hassan Abdal, sir.
Right.
He gets the army flavor. If he wants, he'll join. If he doesn't want, he'll get his education through and then we'll see." So Chota Gogel was put in Cadet College Hassan Abdal. Prime Minister's orders, Bang.
Right.
He was admitted. After 3 days, a report came from the college that he had run away.
Oh, how?
He had just escaped.
All right.
So Mr. Bhutto said, Tariq, he has run away. I said, he can't go very far, sir. He must be in either one of his friend's house in Pindi or Islamabad. He said, you are not worried? I said, no, I'm not worried, sir. He said, well, I'm bloody worried. I'm his father.
Yeah.
He'll be all right, sir. He'll appear in a day or two. He probably needs an assurance that you won't send him back there.
But Bibi is missing in this whole episode.
Bibi was in America in those days. Thrice she came to Lahore, and I used to be sent by Mr. Bhutto to the airport to go and receive her and bring her to Governor's house. One day, Mir Murtaza and myself were playing billiards in the Governor's house billiards room, and she came and sat down. Now, Murtaza and myself were, he is younger than me, he was, but he was a big boy and he was mature enough, and we would play, but since it was only the two of us and the marker, the billiards marker from the Governor's house staff,
Right.
he was standing there in a corner quietly. And Bibi walked in. Now Bibi walked in and she sat down. I had just received her, but Bibi was very reserved and wouldn't say a word. So she sat down, Murtaza and myself used to play, and the moment he would look that way, I would shift my ball to a more convenient place so that I could shoot it better. And when I was not looking, he would shift his ball.
Right.
So, cheating. He said, no, sir, मैंने कुछ नहीं किया. So then when I would do it, he would yell at me and I would say, मैंने भी कुछ नहीं किया. So we would do that and laugh like hell, and that's how we played. So that day when Bibi came in, and we were doing this, so when I first shifted the ball, Captain, you are cheating.
Right.
Yes, I said, no, stay out of it. This is our game. You're not even playing, so I'm not cheating. And the brother said, Pinky, stay out of it. You want to sit here, you have to sit quietly. You don't disturb billiard players. So then yes, then he shifted the ball and she yelled at him also.
Right.
Mir, what are you doing? You're cheating. So she
So
went,
she knew about the billiards.
yes, yes, she knew.
Okay.
Yes. So she went and complained to her father.
Right.
Oh, yes.
Oh, okay.
Both of them are cheats. They cheat like hell while playing billiards. So Mr. Bhutto said, really? Call them both. So we were called up and we were made to sit there. And he says, both of you, I've received reports that you cheat like hell when you play billiards. I said, sir, we play with each other, so nothing happens. We are not betting, we are not betting money on it, nothing. We just play.
Right.
So it endeared me to Mr. Bhutto even more. And then on another sitting, he said, Tariq, do you plan to make the army your career for life, or do you have other plans? Now I was alert. I said, sir, if I have a choice. He says, okay, suppose you have a choice. But let me tell you something. I am the Prime Minister of Pakistan. Put your finger on anything in Pakistan and say you want that, and I'll give it to you. Now tell me, what do you want to do if you want to leave the army? I said, sir, I'd like to join the Foreign Service. Oh, really?
Why would you say that?
Frankly, limited knowledge and limited information. I was a quota from the army, from Multan, didn't know much. And one of my predecessors had joined the Foreign Service. Shoaib Farooqi was his name. He didn't last very long. He left after a year or something. So,
You were enamored by the
yes,
sponsors.
my mama, Mufti Abbas, was in the Foreign Service. Okay, so that also gave me a thought that
So it was a family
place to
influence.
go.
Yeah.
This is the place to go. So he says, is that all? Have you got any other choices? I said, no, sir, this is it. So he says, think about it, Tariq. Why don't you join PIA? in the commercial section of PIA. You will be traveling the whole world on PIA aircraft. If it is the world you want to see, PIA is a better opportunity. This is what Bhutto Sahib said. But if you want to do serious work, then it's the Foreign Service. And the third choice I'd like to give you is join the Pak Arab Fertilizer Company.
Really?
Yes. I was aghast at fertilizer. What do I know about fertilizer? He said, I will tell them, they will send you to the US for an MBA, do an MBA, come back, work with them for 5 years, and then the whole world is open to you.
Why would Mr. Bhutto say that?
Because he thought that I am either out of respect or out of fear or out of not knowing much about the world outside. I was only 23 years old.
Right.
And he wanted to guide me. He says, there are other choices. He said, put your finger on anything in Pakistan and I will give it to you. So he was giving me choices. So I said, with your permission, sir. He says, yes. I said, may I have time to ask my father, sir? So he says, yes, sure. When will you do it? I said, I will run off to Peshawar tonight, sir, and come back tomorrow.
Right.
From Lahore. And come back tomorrow, and I will let you know, sir. He says, by the way, Tariq, do you always consult your father on things that you do in life? I said, yes, sir. Why? I said, because I love him very much, sir. He had tears in his eyes.
Really?
He says, why can't you teach this to my sons? I said, sir, they are also the same as me. He said, how? How do you know? I said, sir, you are the Prime Minister of Pakistan. You are so busy running this complicated country that your boys don't get time to sit with you and to chat with you or to talk to you or to ask you. So he says, yeah, I suppose you're right. How old are you, Tariq? I said, I'm 23, sir. Here I am, the Prime Minister of this country, the most powerful man, he used these words, the most powerful man in this country. And I'm consulting a 23-year-old about how to be a good father.
Wow.
Yes. Yes.
So, how you describe the man then?
I used the word on British television the day he was hanged. I say it now. I loved him as a person, as a prime minister, as an elder, I was not very experienced at 23. What does one know? So I really loved him, and I would probably even try to say things which would impress him about me. It was not made up things, but it was things chosen from here and there which were truth, but which were to impress him. And
Tanveer and Bukhari, don't you think it's mesmerizing?
Really? I mean, I don't have any question to ask you. I just want to listen to you, sir.
Yes.
Please continue.
Sir, please carry on.
so I went to Peshawar. I came back the next day. Yes, Tariq.
Okay, you went to your father.
Yes, I went to
All right.
my father. And my father, being the old conservative person, thought that PIA and he says, what do you know about fertilizer?
Right.
So he said, nothing. I said, nothing, I don't know anything about fertilizer. PIA? Kya hai yaar PIA? Government service mein raho. Foreign service is a good choice. Usme jao. If you're asking me, I said, of course, I came to ask you. He says, well, then go to the foreign service.
Right.
Will he do it for you? I said, he's the Prime Minister.
Right.
So I came back and I told him, good choice. I knew he would say that.
Right.
He's a good father. He's given you sane advice. And the next day he told Nawab Sahib, told the governor, Nawab Sahab, Tariq wants to join the Foreign Service of Pakistan. Would you please write a letter to me recommending him for the Foreign Service? And I will approve it instantly. Letter went. After 2 days, letter came back, approved. Third Secretary in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. This was the month of April of 1975, and correspondence started between me and the Establishment Division. And I was told that I should join the Administrative Staff College on 1st of August to join my training at the Staff College.
So you were equated with which common?
I was senior to third common and just below second common,
So between second and third
between
common.
second and third. 1st of August 1975,
Right.
Joined the
I-
Foreign Service.
I walked into the
Staff
Pakistan
College.
Administrative
Just cross
Staff
the road,
College.
sir. You
Right.
just
Cross the road.
Just cross the road.
Yes, out of one gate and into another.
Nee, was it for the common training program?
No, no.
STP.
This is
You joined this
DMD
specialized
and
training
STP.
program.
F4TC, Foreign Office Training Course 5.
Right, okay.
F4TC 5.
Okay.
Common trainers used to finish common training and then come
Come
here.
to the
Okay.
specialized
Yeah,
training.
DMD
You straight
course.
away went for the
I
specialized
went to specialized training.
training. Right.
It's
And
tricky.
then how your career progressed?
By the grace of Almighty, I had a fantastic 36 years after that. I finished Staff College training and entered the Foreign Office building on 4th of November 1975. And first person I met coming at me was Ambassador Riaz Khokhar, who was Director Soviet Union at that time.
Right.
And he looked at me, and I was surely looking confused and lost. So he said, "Hey, Simeon, are you new here?" I said, "Yes, sir." "When did you join?" I said, "I'm just coming to join, sir." "So where are you going?" I said, "I am going to somebody called SORNT, and I have to report to him." So he says,
Right.
"Okay, when you finish, come to my room 111.
Right.
I am Director Soviet Union. Come and see me." "Yes, sir." So I
In
went
75.
in 1975.
Right.
Now, you asked me a question whether I am a batchmate of Salman Bashir.
Yeah.
I am senior to Salman Bashir,
Right.
and I am junior to second common.
Okay.
Okay, so I was placed in between. What happened was, I could have joined with Salman Bashir and all, but in 1975, no common entry was made, no CSS exam was held.
Right?
Yes, no CSS exam was held. So there was no batch of 75.
Oh.
So we became the batch of 75.
Okay.
They joined 76 and they went to common training program, and by the time they came to the ministry, it was late 1977.
And you were already
And
a
here I
veteran.
was, an experienced section officer with 2 years of service.
Right.
So, so that's a separate story. But when I used to sit with them, with Salman and Muiz and these blokes, Athar Mahmood, mashallah, God bless his soul, and others, Iftikhar Kazmi, and I used to sit with them. And one day I was sitting there and I said, "You know, guys," I said, "What? This guy is going to become the next foreign secretary in future."
Right.
He said, "Who?" I said, "Salman."
You said.
I said, he said,
Why? Why so?
because he came across as a brilliant fellow at that time. Sober, brilliant, good talker, less talk. And I just blurted out. I said, he will be a foreign secretary. in
It
the
was
future."
prophetic then.
It was probably was.
Yeah. Sir, fast forward.
Okay. Finished my time in the Foreign Office, 3 years. First posting was to the UK in Manchester as Vice Consul of Pakistan.
Right.
I spent 4 years there, came back to the ministry, and I became Section Officer Western Europe 1, 2 years, and then I was promoted to Director, and I became Director Gulf Region, and did my time there. I was picked by somebody, probably DGP, to be Director MOS. We had a new Minister of State,
Right.
Zain Noorani.
Okay.
Okay, abusive fellow, Bad fellow.
Really?
Yes, very bad fellow. He was not a
But
nice
his
man.
fame was Geneva Accords.
Yes, yes. I was selected.
Were you there at the Geneva Accords?
No, I wasn't, because I was called by Foreign Secretary Niaz Naik and said, भाई वो तुम्हें कह रहे हैं कि तुम उधर जाओ Minister of State के पास. So you have just been promoted yesterday and I don't want you to go there. Foreign Secretary said. I said, right, sir.
Foreign Secretary was so powerful?
Yes, Niaz Naik.
You think Niaz Naik was so powerful?
Powerful against DGP? Of course he was.
Really?
DGP was pushing me to. Yes, yes. Yes. The little man was quite powerful.
You can, read between the lines.
And you said that.
Yes. Yes. So I was made Director GR and I was kept there. And after some weeks, month, a note came from President and CMLA, General Ziaul Haq. There was a letter from Prince Rashid bin Al Maktoum, father of Prince Muhammad.
Yes.
He had sent a letter to General Zia that I want to start an airline. Whose phone is that? Anyhow, I want to start an airline and I want one Airbus and two Boeing 737s from PIA.
Right.
Cockpit crew and cabin crew. And I will paint them in the new colors of the Emirates Airlines for 2 years. So I want these aircraft from you. So General Ziaul Haq said, what should we tell them? He wrote on that, and it came down the line, Foreign Minister, Foreign Secretary, Additional Secretary, DG, on my table. So I wrote a note which created the Emirates Airlines. My younger brother was in PIA. First thing I did, he was PIA, posted in Dubai as station manager. So I picked up the phone and said, oh, तुम्हें पता है कि तुम्हारे नाक के नीचे एक एयरलाइन बन रही है? He said, कौन सी एयरलाइन? I said, Emirates Airlines. दुबई बना रहा है. Really? I said, keep your eyes and ears open and go for it. He did. He spent the rest of his life in Emirates and then retired from Emirates with a very handsome pension. So I wrote a note saying that we should, and we did, and we gave them 3 aircraft and the crews, and they started Emirates Airlines, and look where they are and look where we are, and our poor PIAs.
What a tragedy. I think.
Yeah, what a tragedy.
It is EK1 was Karachi actually.
Yes, I know.
Yeah.
Sir,
Riaz,
I don't know from where to start and where to end. I am so, mesmerized with your conversation, sir. It is, in fact, a recorded history which we are doing now. Sir, you have served in the Pakistan's Foreign Service, as you mentioned, more than 35 years. And, being your juniors, we have seen you working from directors onward up to ambassadors. And, we have seen you in a different way. When you were Pakistan's ambassador to Kabul, you did a lot for your country, but suddenly we saw in the newspapers that you were kidnapped by someone. We don't know actually who were the culprits, what was behind that episode, how did it harm the national interest of Pakistan. Would you like to say something which you have not said earlier?
My kidnapping happened almost 2 months, less than 2 months after the episode at Lal Masjid in Islamabad, in which the Pakistan security forces caught a lot of these Taliban types who were holed up in the Lal Masjid, arrested lots of them, and even arrested Maulana Abdul Aziz, who was trying to escape from there in a burqa. my kidnappers told me that they didn't know who or what I was, but after questioning me, they found out that I was, according to their language, a big fish, and that they will be able to secure the release of lots of their people in exchange for me and my driver and my gunman, my bodyguard. That's what their plan was. I had no idea how they made their plan, but they made it. I had gone to Tokyo for a UN donors conference on Afghanistan, and when I came back, there was no PIA flight on the day I was supposed to go back to Kabul. So my car was standing there, and I told my driver, let's go. We have done this trip down the road several times, so it was no big deal, and we chose to go. I spent the night before my actual journey in my daughter's house in Peshawar. My daughter is a married girl, she was living in Peshawar. I had also made arrangements for traveling by ICRC aircraft to fly to Kabul, because it took only half an hour and you were there. Whereas the drive used to be 4.5 hours, 5 hours, sometimes long and tiring. But it was also because I was advised that I should make always dual plans and not let anyone know until the last minute what I was going to do. So I decided to go by road, forgot the aircraft and traveled by road. I left Peshawar, left my daughter's house. Last thing I did was kissed my granddaughter's face and started off. The bodyguard in the front seat, the driver driving, me in the back seat of our Land Cruiser. And we set off towards Landikotal, but halfway down there, at a place called Ali Masjid, we were waylaid by a pickup full of Taliban, 14 of them, sitting in the front as well as in the tray in the back. And within 45 seconds, I think, it wasn't even a minute, when we were transferred from our vehicle and put into their pickup, and they, some of them, sat in my vehicle and started driving, following the pickup. And we just descended from the road and went into the wilderness. There was no track, there was no road, there were no tire marks, there was nothing. But we got off the road and we started driving, and we drove for the next 11 hours until we reached some place. It was dark, night. It was month of February, short days. And when we reached there, it was snow covered. I had absolutely no idea where we were. But I could overhear the conversations between the Taliban who were there and the ones who had brought us there. And I discovered that we were in Tira Valley in Khyber Agency. So we were told to get off the vehicle. We did. We were in knee-deep snow, and we were told to march behind one of them. So we trudged along in the snow, and then we suddenly came to a hill, and we were told to climb. Now I was wearing leather-soled shoes. I had not prepared to be kidnapped. So as I would try to climb up the snow, I would slip back the same distance. I was gaining nothing. So one of the Talib boys, who had snatched my red-colored muffler from my neck and was wearing it very happily, somehow took some kind of a pity on me or what, that he came and said, just stand still. And he sat on his haunches behind me and grabbed my ankles. And he would walk sitting down position and push my ankles like this, step by step. And he took me up the hill. He took me up the hill. There were 3 huts above on the hill, and we were put in one hut. The other hut was a loo, and the third hut was kitchen plus living quarters for the few talibs that were there. We spent the night there, freezing cold. They gave me a sleeping bag, but most of all, I was wearing jeans and a grey colored shirt and a black pullover sweater. My jacket was lying on the seat because I was in a warm car. I was driving to Kabul and I was not needing to wear my jacket. But jeans was the one which was objectionable to them. So they brought a shalwar kameez and gave it to me and said, put it on, remove this. So I went to that filth, which was called a loo, and changed my clothes and came back and shoved myself into the sleeping bag. It was past 1 o'clock. We went to sleep.
That's the first night.
First night.
Right.
First night. At about 5:30, I could hear in my sleep. I was still in deep sleep, but I could hear some shuffling going on and some activity. So I opened my eye and saw that there was preparation for namaz. And I went into rebellious mode and said, nahi padta hu. I turned my face, pretended that I can't hear them. That same Sukda who took me up the hill came and sat next to me near my head and whispered in my ear, don't miss a namaz. Don't miss. If you do, it is 40 lashes for missing one namaz. So 5 namaz you miss in a day, 200 lashes. You will not survive the day. You will die. Don't miss the namaz. So out I came, went and did my wuzu and started off with them.
Sir, here, before you go further, I would like to ask for some more information. Do you think it was a targeted operation? Were you the real target of kidnapping? Or you think today that it was just a kidnapping and the victim turned out to be Ambassador of Pakistan, Mr. Tariq Azizuddin?
To be very honest, what I have been able to gather up till today is that they were looking for a high value target. They didn't know me and they had contacts within our system, and that somebody informed them that I was passing by, so they said good enough. They described my vehicle and to them, and I happened to be there when they said it. So they grabbed me. In the car they were questioning me, interrogating me. Who are you? What are you? Where are you going? What are you doing? So I realized that Tariq Azizuddin was not a target. High value target was the target. And anyone who comes in their grab is then held on to for getting their people released who were arrested in the Lal Masjid operation. That's as best as I know.
Because I have seen some information somewhere that you were already a target of the Taliban at that time. Perhaps they knew your movement right from the beginning when you left home of your daughter. If that is true, then they must be it must be in their information that the person they were kidnapping was the Ambassador of Pakistan, not any unknown high-value target.
You know, I've heard this myself too, and the only thing that I can say is that I do not have evidence to prove any of the theories that were made. What does my mind like to believe? One or the other or the third? That's my belief. But if I can't prove it, and if I'm confronted and say, okay, prove what you have said, and if I can't prove it, then I cut a very sorry figure. Therefore, I just leave it at that, at what the Taliban told me. And they were the kidnappers. They said that we were looking for a high-value target, and you walked right into our trap. So, fine, we are happy with what we have.